Have you ever walked into your own home and felt like something was silently working against your peace? Like no matter how much you pray, how hard you try to focus, or how deeply you long for breakthrough, something in the atmosphere just doesn't agree with the healing you're trying to cultivate. You light candles, you play worship music, you speak declarations over your life, but still, there's a heaviness, a strange sense of resistance. It's not loud, it doesn't scream, but it lingers like a spiritual fog that clouds your clarity, steals your energy, and subtly keeps you stuck. Most people ignore this feeling. They chalk it up to stress, exhaustion, or a bad night's sleep. But what if it's deeper than that? What if the very environment you live in is holding on to spiritual tension, blocking your growth, disturbing your emotional balance, and weakening the presence of peace in your own sanctuary? You see, we often underestimate the energy of our space. We assume that clutter is just clutter, that objects are just objects, that the atmosphere of a room is just a matter of style or comfort. But spiritually, it's so much more than that. Your home is not just where you live, it's where your spirit breathes. It's the place where your prayers rise, where your faith is either fed or slowly silenced. There are things around you right now, items on your shelves, corners of your room, old keepsakes and forgotten gifts that might be quietly influencing your emotional state and spiritual direction. And the most dangerous part? You've gotten used to it. You've stopped noticing the weight, you've learned to live with the noise, but your soul still feels the imbalance, and your spirit knows it's time for alignment. This is not about superstition, this is about discernment. It's about finally paying attention to what your inner self has been trying to tell you for months, maybe even years. That the stagnation you feel, the delays you face, the heaviness you carry may not be rooted in your mindset alone. It may be tied to the spiritual atmosphere around you. And until that atmosphere is cleansed, reordered, and realigned with the presence of God, true peace will always feel just out of reach, because spiritual clutter isn't always visible. Sometimes it hides behind sentimentality. Sometimes it's disguised as beauty. Sometimes it's woven into the fabric of our routines, our memories, even our decor. And unless we pause long enough to observe, to reflect, to ask the hard questions, we will continue to decorate around dysfunction and pray from within a space that isn't in agreement with the very things we're asking for. So ask yourself, what energy is my home really holding? What emotions are echoing through these walls? What forgotten items or outdated symbols might be whispering confusion into my spirit? This video isn't just a teaching, it's a journey, a deep spiritual inventory, a call to awaken your awareness and reclaim your space, not just physically but emotionally, energetically and prophetically. Because sometimes the breakthrough you're praying for doesn't require a louder prayer. It requires a quieter room, a lighter space, a spiritually aligned environment that invites God's presence and releases your soul into peace, clarity, and movement. Because the truth is, your atmosphere matters, and sometimes the things we ignore are the very things blocking our blessings. If what you've heard so far is resonating with you, if your spirit feels that quiet confirmation that this message is uncovering something you've felt but couldn't quite explain, I want to invite you to share it in the comments. Tell us what you've been sensing in your home. Have you felt a strange heaviness, an emotional fog you couldn't name, or have you been holding on to something you now realize it's time to release? Your words could be the breakthrough someone else has been waiting for. Just type, "I feel this message in my spirit," or open your heart and tell us your story. This is a space of healing and connection. You are not alone in this. And if this video is already stirring something inside you, if it's opening your eyes and confirming what your soul has quietly known, don't leave without supporting this mission. Give this video a like so that this message can reach more hearts and more homes. Click that thumbs up not just for us, but to tell the platform we need more content that speaks life, truth, and healing. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. Hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next message. the next moment of clarity, the next step in your spiritual realignment. What's coming next could be the very word you've been praying for. Now, let's go deeper. There's something profoundly spiritual about silence, and yet it's one of the most endangered elements in modern life. In many homes, noise has become the default setting, not just the loud kind, but the subtle, constant hum of background music, television static, social media videos on autoplay, the buzz of a phone lighting up, even the quiet beeps and pings we've learned to ignore. These sounds seem harmless, even comforting at times, but in the spiritual realm, noise is never neutral. It carries frequency, it carries intention, and most importantly, it can carry interference. We often pray for clarity, for divine direction, for peace that surpasses understanding. But how often do we truly prepare the environment to receive those answers? When the atmosphere around us is filled with endless streams of noise, our spirit begins to struggle to tune into the frequency of heaven. The whisper of the Holy Spirit gets buried beneath artificial sound waves. And we wonder why we feel distant from God, why our prayers feel unanswered or our discernment feels dull. It's not always because we're doing something wrong. Sometimes it's because the environment we've created makes it difficult to hear what is already being said. Many believers have unknowingly welcomed spiritual static into their homes. A TV left on in the background out of habit. A playlist that doesn't feed the soul but fills the silence. Even the placement of speakers or digital devices in sacred spaces, like bedrooms or prayer corners, can shift the atmosphere without us realizing it. Over time, this constant flood of sound begins to normalize anxiety, distract the mind, and desensitize the spirit. What once felt holy now feels crowded. What once inspired reflection now breeds restlessness. And here's the truth most people miss. The enemy doesn't need to shout to gain influence. He only needs to keep you from hearing God. That's the strategy. Not to scream lies, but to fill the space with so much irrelevant sound that the truth becomes harder to detect. And once your spiritual hearing is dulled, confusion sets in, decisions feel harder, peace feels elusive, and the home that should have been a sanctuary becomes a battleground of mental clutter and emotional fatigue. But when you begin to strip away the noise, something sacred returns. Stillness, awareness, alignment. The gentle presence of God becomes clearer, more tangible, and suddenly the same space that once felt heavy becomes a place of refuge again. Your thoughts slow down, your emotions settle, and your spirit begins to breathe. Have you felt this in your own life? That constant hum around you? That strange sense that something unseen is draining your clarity? I want to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever turned everything off and felt something shift? Write, "I reclaim my silence," if you're ready to take back your atmosphere. Or share what kind of noise you feel most drawn to silence. Your words could awaken something in someone else who needs to hear it. Have you ever stopped to think about what actually crosses the threshold of your home each day? Not just people, not just packages or pets, but energy, intention, atmosphere. In many traditions across the world, removing your shoes before entering a home is more than cultural etiquette. It's spiritual symbolism. It marks the moment you leave the chaos of the outside world behind. It's a sacred act of transition, but in the spiritual realm, it goes even deeper. What if the threshold of your home has become so wide open that it no longer filters what comes in? What if you've been unknowingly inviting conflict, heaviness, or anxiety in, simply because you never asked it to stay out? Think about your daily rhythm. You come home from work, from the grocery store, from traffic and tension and noise. You open the door, step in, and everything you carried with you walks in too. The stress, the arguments, the emotional residue of a difficult conversation. You think you've left it behind, but it lingers. It follows you in like invisible dust clinging to your clothes, and it begins to settle into your space, into your energy, into the atmosphere that's supposed to be your refuge. Your home becomes a silent container for every external battle you've been fighting, and yet you wonder why your rest isn't deep. why your thoughts still race at night, why peace feels fragile even after hours of prayer. It's because spiritual doors don't just swing open with rituals, they respond to awareness, to intention, to authority. The same way you would never let a stranger walk into your home without permission, you must learn to guard the unseen threshold too, not with fear, but with discernment. You're not just managing a household, you're stewarding an environment. Some doors are open physically, but closed spiritually. Others are the opposite. But too many homes today are fully open to every frequency, through screens, through people, through unresolved emotions, yet closed to the kind of stillness that heals. We've normalized coming home and diving right back into noise. We bring in gossip through our phones, arguments from our day, digital distractions by the dozen. The home becomes a revolving door of energy that never stops long enough to become holy. But something changes when you pause at the threshold. When you take a moment, however brief, to acknowledge the shift, to say, even silently, peace enters with me, chaos stays out. That small act can become a spiritual habit, and habits create culture. Culture creates atmosphere, and atmosphere over time transforms the soul. Have you ever thought about what comes in with you when you walk through your own front door? Does your space feel like a retreat or a continuation of the world's pressure? Let's talk about it in the comments. Write "I reclaim my threshold" if this resonated with you, or tell me what you've noticed shifts the energy in your home when you arrive. Your comment might be the spark someone else needs to change how they enter their sacred space. There's a strange kind of weight that hangs in the background of a home, not loud, not obvious, but always present. It lives in the corner where a half-assembled shelf still leans against the wall. It lingers in the box of wires you meant to sort, in the notebook with plans you started but never finished. These things don't shout, but they whisper. They whisper, "You're behind." They whisper, "You never finish what you start." And over time, those whispers become internal dialogue. Without realizing it, you begin to agree with them. You start to feel overwhelmed before you even begin, stuck before you even try. Spiritually, unfinished projects create what I call energy echoes. They are physical reminders of spiritual hesitation. We often associate clutter with laziness or procrastination, but the truth is much deeper. Most clutter is emotional. It's a reflection of something unresolved within. You walk past that broken drawer every day, not because you're lazy, but because somewhere inside you've made peace with postponing. Somewhere you've said, "Not now," so many times that later became your default response to progress. And what's dangerous is that your spirit begins to mirror that same delay, that same pause, that same lack of motion. It doesn't matter whether it's a forgotten paint can, a stack of unread books, or a project you planned but never touched again. Each one carries a frequency of stagnation, and that frequency seeps into your energy field, your focus, even your prayer life. You might be asking God for momentum while standing in an environment that visually reinforces delay. You ask for open doors, but everything around you testifies that you haven't finished walking through the last one. And that contradiction creates spiritual noise, a dissonance between what you're believing for and what your environment is reinforcing. It's like trying to run a software update on a phone that hasn't cleared its cache in years. Too many files open, too many things half-loaded. Eventually, the system crashes, not because it's broken, but because it's overloaded. Your spirit was designed for flow, for movement, for closure. And when your space is filled with reminders of someday, your energy gets stuck in a loop of unfinished beginnings. The most powerful shifts often happen when we don't wait for motivation but choose intention. Just like healing doesn't always feel exciting, progress doesn't always feel dramatic. Sometimes it's simply picking up where you left off, finishing what you started, closing the loop, tying the loose ends. Not to impress anyone, but to create energetic space for something new to arrive, because new blessings don't land in crowded places. They look for room, for readiness, for welcome. Now I want to hear from you. What unfinished project in your home feels like it's silently pressing on your peace? Comment below with the phrase, "I break the cycle of delay," if this spoke to your heart, or tell me the one thing you know you need to finish this week. Your breakthrough might start with that simple act, and your words might inspire someone else to do the same. Have you ever walked into a room and felt immediately off without knowing why? Maybe everything looks organized. Nothing is technically out of place, but something in the layout makes the space feel blocked, uncomfortable, or disconnected. What most people don't realize is that furniture placement is more than interior design. It's spiritual alignment. The way objects are arranged in your home speaks to your subconscious, to your emotions, and yes, even to your spirit. A chair turned away from natural light. A couch pushed against a wall where conversation doesn't flow. A desk facing a blank wall instead of a window. These aren't just design choices, they're energetic instructions to your environment. Your home responds to the way space is treated. When you create dead zones, areas where no one sits, where light is blocked, where the room feels cut off, you're not just shaping how people interact with the space, you're influencing how energy moves. And in spiritual terms, blocked energy often mirrors blocked purpose. You can be praying for connection, clarity, or movement in your life, while living in a home where the very arrangement of your furniture says, "Stay stuck." It's subtle, but real. And over time, these physical cues begin to shape your emotional patterns. Picture your living room for a moment. Where does the main seating face? Is it directed toward connection or distraction? Does it promote rest or avoidance? Think about how often you sit in your home in a posture that turns away from others, or from light, or from openness. You might not even notice it anymore, but your spirit does. You were designed to move toward life, toward warmth, toward divine presence. And when your space resists that flow, your inner world starts to resist it too. This is why, in so many spiritual practices, even outside of the Christian faith, alignment matters. The direction you face when you pray, the way you sit during reflection, the light you choose to place over sacred areas. None of these are accidents. They are all part of a larger pattern of creating agreement between your external space and your internal intention. So if the atmosphere in your home has felt off, disconnected, or emotionally stagnant, take a second look at your space. Where is everything pointing? What is the arrangement reinforcing? Does it invite presence or distance? Even small changes can unlock massive shifts. Rotating a chair, opening space between objects, placing your reading nook near natural light instead of under a dark corner. These adjustments aren't just aesthetic, they are prophetic. They send a message to your atmosphere. I am ready for change. I am ready for clarity. I am choosing flow, presence, and openness. Now I want to hear from you. Take a look around your space and ask yourself, what is my home trying to tell me through its layout? Write, "I realign my space with purpose" in the comments if this message resonated with you, or share one small change you're inspired to make today. Your shift might be the spark someone else was waiting for. There's something alluring about second-hand treasures. A vintage mirror from the flea market, a unique sculpture found at a thrift store, a hand-me-down chair from a friend or family member. These items often come into our lives with charm, character, and history, but it's exactly that history we seldom stop to question. Because while we may love the uniqueness, we rarely pause to ask what kind of energy these objects might be carrying. Not every item is just wood, metal, or fabric. Some of them hold memory, emotion, atmosphere. And if you're not discerning, you might unknowingly be bringing in more than just furniture. You may be welcoming spiritual residue into your sacred space. Imagine receiving a painting from someone whose life has been steeped in bitterness, grief, or emotional instability. The colors may be beautiful, the frame ornate, but every time you walk past it, something feels heavy, not enough to raise alarms, just enough to dull the light. You dismiss it Because how could an object possibly hold that kind of power? But energy doesn't need your permission to exist. It just needs space to linger. And many of the things we bring into our homes under the label of decoration are actually subtle carriers of frequencies that clash with the peace we're desperately trying to cultivate. Science itself acknowledges that everything has vibration. That matter absorbs energy. Think of it like a sponge. An object can sit in the middle of years of arguments, trauma, depression, or dysfunction, and over time, it absorbs that emotional climate. Then it moves from that environment into yours, still soaked in the weight of its past. And if you're not spiritually aware, you'll wonder why certain rooms feel dense, why your thoughts feel scattered, or why your sleep is restless, even though everything looks aesthetically pleasing on the surface. This is not superstition. This is spiritual hygiene. The same way you wouldn't eat off a plate without washing it first, you shouldn't spiritually consume what hasn't been cleansed. That second-hand item might have been in a home full of strife. It could have been a gift in the middle of a betrayal. It might have once stood in the corner of a room where someone wept in silence for years. And now it sits in your living room, broadcasting an invisible signal your spirit keeps picking up on, but your mind doesn't know how to interpret. This is why prayer and discernment must go hand in hand with what we allow into our space. Before you hang that frame, before you place that mirror or shelf, ask, what atmosphere is this object carrying into my life? You may be surprised at what you feel when you truly stop and listen. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever brought something into your home that felt off, even if you couldn't explain why? Share it in the comments. Write, I cleanse what I carry in, if this opened your eyes. Or tell me about one second-hand item you now see differently. Your insight might set someone else free. It's easy to think of walls as silent, neutral parts of our homes, structures that simply hold the roof above us and divide one room from another. But spiritually speaking, walls are storytellers. They absorb, they echo, they witness, and over time they begin to project. The colors we paint, the images we hang, the words we frame, none of these are passive choices. They create atmosphere, they shape perception, they imprint emotion into space. And when those visuals begin to contradict the healing, clarity, or peace we're asking God for, we may be building our homes around a contradiction we haven't even noticed. Walk through your space slowly. Look at the artwork on your walls, the photographs, the quotes in frames, the posters from years ago. What are they saying when you're not speaking? Because they are saying something. A painting of a stormy sea might look bold, but does it stir unrest in your subconscious every time your eyes pass over it? A framed quote about ambition might have motivated you once, but now feels like pressure in a season where your soul is asking to slow down. A family photo where you were smiling through pain, does it now reopen an emotional file every time it's in view? We forget that our environment feeds our thoughts before we even realize we're thinking. Your eyes land on a certain image, your brain registers it, and your spirit reacts, sometimes instantly, sometimes subtly over time. And without even noticing, your emotional frequency begins to shift. You were calm, but now you're agitated. You were grateful, but now you feel lacking. You were resting, but now you feel tense. Why? Because the energy projected from your walls doesn't match the spiritual climate your soul is trying to cultivate. Even color has weight. A dark, heavy palette might feel cozy at first, but over months or years, it can contribute to emotional heaviness, especially if it fills the spaces where you sleep, reflect, or pray. And the strangest part is how normal it all starts to feel. You stop noticing the subtle ways your environment is influencing your mood, your creativity, your clarity. It just becomes how your home is. But what if it's not your spirit that's stuck? It's your space that's keeping you anchored to an emotional loop. This is where discernment becomes a tool of liberation. You don't need to strip your walls bare, but you do need to ask, is this reinforcing peace or interrupting it? Is this helping me walk into the next chapter of who I'm becoming, or silently keeping me tethered to who I used to be? Now I want to hear your voice. What are the walls in your home saying when you're not speaking? Drop a comment below and write, "My walls will reflect my healing," if this message opened your eyes, or share one image or quote you now feel led to remove or replace. Your shift could be the silent permission someone else needs to finally take theirs. There's a quiet kind of emotional noise that fills a home when it's still decorated with versions of yourself that no longer exist. You walk past a shelf and see an old journal from a season you've outgrown, a dress hanging in the closet from a time when your confidence was performative, not authentic, a box of vision boards filled with goals you no longer feel aligned with. These things don't scream. They sit quietly, but their presence carries the energy of who you were, not who you are now, and definitely not who you're becoming. We tend to hold on to objects out of habit. Some are tied to nostalgia, others to fear. You keep the books from that business phase, just in case you go back to it. You keep the equipment from a hobby you haven't touched in years, hoping maybe the inspiration will return. You keep the heels from a lifestyle you know God has already called you out of, but letting them go feels like letting go of a whole identity. These aren't just items. They're fragments of your past, versions of you that were real but are no longer relevant. And the more you keep them in your environment, the harder it becomes to fully embody the version of you that heaven is now calling forward. Your space should be a mirror of your transformation. But if everywhere you look reminds you of what didn't work, who you used to please, what you once believed but now question, then your spirit starts to feel split. It's like trying to update your phone while still using the apps from an outdated system. Eventually things crash, not because you're broken, but because your environment hasn't caught up with your internal evolution. This is why some people feel emotionally confused in their own homes. Their prayers are new, their mindset is shifting, their heart is healing, but they're still surrounded by symbols of a life they're no longer living. You can't walk fully in your present purpose while surrounded by the echoes of a past identity. It's not about rejecting who you were, it's about releasing what no longer supports who you are now. Growth isn't betrayal. Maturity isn't abandonment. Sometimes honoring the old version of you means letting go of what no longer fits, not just in size, but in spirit. And the most powerful part? When you begin to remove those misaligned items, even silently, your soul feels the shift. Clarity returns, emotional noise softens, and your prayers start to rise with less resistance. Now, I want to invite you into this conversation. What object in your home reminds you of a version of yourself you've already outgrown? Drop it in the comments or simply write, "I release what no longer reflects me." Let this be your public declaration of private growth and an invitation for someone else to do the same. There's something strangely symbolic about the untouched corners of a home. Those areas behind the furniture you haven't moved in years. The top shelf that's just out of reach. The dark corner where dust gathers unnoticed, where forgotten boxes sit quietly, collecting layers of time. These spaces may not catch the attention of guests. They may not even register to your conscious mind anymore. But spiritually, they hold weight. Because what is hidden still speaks, and often the most spiritually stagnant places in your home are the ones you never look at. These corners act like energetic closets. They store the things you didn't know what to do with. The bag of old letters you're not ready to throw away. The electronics that no longer work but somehow feel wrong to discard. The stack of paperwork that reminds you of a season of life you still haven't fully processed. They don't scream for attention, but they hum in the background. They become static, cluttered silence, and your spirit, even if your mind doesn't notice, registers that stagnation every time you walk past. In the physical realm, we call it dust. In the emotional realm, it becomes delayed healing. In the spiritual realm, it creates resistance because the Holy Spirit moves best in places of clarity, intention, and openness. And those forgotten spaces, whether physical or symbolic, represent areas of your life where movement has stopped. It's not about being obsessive with cleanliness. It's about acknowledging that everything in your environment is either creating flow or blocking it. When corners are neglected, energy gets stuck. And when energy is stuck, your prayers begin to feel like they're bouncing back instead of rising. Even biblically, the corners of spaces were considered sacred. In the book of Leviticus, God instructed his people not to harvest the edges of their fields, so that the poor and the stranger might eat. The corners had purpose, they mattered, and in your home, those corners you never clean might be holding the emotional crumbs of moments you never fully healed from. Unforgiveness, regret, confusion, disappointment, memories you didn't want to confront, so you boxed them up, literally and spiritually, and left them in the dark. But you don't need to be afraid of those corners. You just need to be aware of them. Because sometimes breakthrough doesn't come through another prayer. It comes through intention, through movement, through acknowledging what you've ignored and bringing it into the light. Even if it's just opening a box, dusting a shelf, or finally looking at what you've been avoiding, that act becomes prophetic. You're not just cleaning, you're reclaiming space. You're creating room for something new. Now, I want to hear from you. Is there a corner in your home that you've avoided for months, maybe even years? Share it with me in the comments, or write, "I bring light to what I've ignored," if this message hits something deep in you. Your act of courage might give someone else the strength to look into their own forgotten spaces. There's a quiet fear that hides in the things we keep just in case. That drawer filled with expired documents you're afraid to throw out. The stack of old phone chargers, keys you can't identify, instruction manuals for gadgets you don't even own anymore. The clothing you haven't worn in years, but you hold on to it because, what if you need it again? These things seem harmless. They take up little space individually, but collectively, they create an invisible message that reverberates through your home. I don't trust the future. What we keep often reveals more about our internal world than we realize. Some objects are held not for function or meaning, but out of fear. Fear of lack, fear of forgetting, fear of making the wrong decision. And fear, though subtle in this form, becomes a spiritual thread that weaves itself through the atmosphere. When you walk into a home filled with things kept out of anxiety rather than alignment, you can feel it. The space isn't alive, it's cautious, guarded, stuck, because fear doesn't organize. Fear hoards, and even when it looks neat, it speaks limitation. Your home should be a reflection of your faith, not your fears. When you fill it with items that represent hesitation, you unknowingly create an environment of energetic indecision, and that begins to echo in your mindset. You start overthinking, doubting, second-guessing. Your prayers become hesitant. Your decisions become delayed. The flow of clarity becomes murky, not because you're not seeking God, but because your space is reinforcing confusion. This doesn't mean that preparation is wrong. God is a God of order and wisdom, but there's a difference between being prepared and being paralyzed. One flows from peace, the other grows from fear. The line is thin, but it's there, and you can feel it. You'll know you've crossed it when your space starts feeling crowded, yet emotionally empty. When you open a drawer and feel anxiety instead of usefulness. When you keep something not because you love it, but because letting go feels risky. These are the silent compromises we make. We keep expired medication just in case. We keep clothes from 10 years ago just in case. We keep broken things with no real plan to repair them just in case. And over time, our homes become altars to doubt. Not because we want them to, but because we never pause to ask, why am I really keeping this? Now I want to hear from you. What is something in your home you've been holding on to out of fear instead of purpose? Be honest with yourself. And if this spoke to you, drop a comment saying, "I choose faith over fear," or share one item you now feel ready to release. Your breakthrough might begin with one brave decision, and your comment might unlock that same courage in someone else. If you've made it this far, it means something in your spirit resonated deeply with this message, and we would love to hear from you. Take a moment to share how this video touched your heart, whether it brought clarity, comfort, conviction, or simply gave you language for something you've been feeling for a long time. Your voice matters here. Leave a comment below and let us know which part spoke to you the most. And if this message has blessed you in any way, don't forget to support this mission by clicking the like button. It's a simple act, but it helps us reach more people who are searching for healing, truth, and spiritual alignment. Make sure you also subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss the next word, insight, or breakthrough moment. And before you go, there's another video waiting for you right now on the end screen. It's a continuation of this journey, and I truly believe it carries a message your soul is ready to receive. Thank you for walking through this with us. May peace return to every corner of your life.